Hi, everybody. I am Tim Schroeder. I'm the owner and operator and engineer at Schroeder Amplification here in Highland Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. Today, I am speaking with a good friend of mine, Lenny Mayeux of Mofi fame, as well as many other fames, which we'll get into during the course of this conversation. First off, those who don't know Lenny, let's start with a little bit of background on him, and maybe you could start with kind of how we met a couple of years ago. We've become fast friends and talking daily, and it was good for my spirit, etc. To chat with you. So
yeah,
funny that we met over soldering irons of all things.
Oh. Yeah, I had a good friend named Lori Fortune whose family owned an American-made soldering company called Edson, and they are, they invented NASA soldering, very high-end, mostly aerospace or military uses these handmade soldering irons. I went to law school with his older daughter, and I met their family during that, and what a wonderful family. And then her father, Bill Fortune, who is the lead designer, everything, passed away. And she just said, man, help me. We need some help. I'm kind of lost what's going on. And I just said, okay, let me reach out to the guys at HiFi and, the pro audio and see what we can do to get you some exposure. So I just did a little bit of effort, and I just basically called guys that I wanted their stuff. I'm like, ooh, I want a Schroeder amplifier. So I called Tim Schroeder. Hey, Tim, you could use these soldering irons. I probably reached out to about 70 people because these are soldering irons that are just perfect. And out of about the 70 people, Tim calls me back because if there was something out in the world that's better or could make his product better, he wanted to know about it. And that is a testament to him. Well, not only that, I really wanted one of his amps. So we became fast friends, and more so, I just like him as a person. I like how he hears music, what he feels about music, his dedication to what he has is perfection, which is never perfection because it's always out in the future for him. And it was like kindred spirits. Like I've always said, we're two sides of a coin. I'm, very outgoing and, kind of ready, shoot, aim, and he's very methodical. So we work really well together. And from that, I got some of his his amps and just fell in love with him. They're right here. Can you see them?
Yeah,
love those things. I kept telling him he works too hard. It takes him forever to make these amps, makes them one at a time by hand. I said, you got to get into HiFi. You got to get into HiFi because that was one of your first loves, you told me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So over time, he started becoming a HiFi dealer, and I consider him one of the best in the country.
All right. Thank you very much. And I feel the same about you. You're well known and beloved by most in the industry. I've been around this industry, though not, as necessarily in sales, but I've been designing systems for people and, designing actual components and et cetera since I was a teenager. And, now that I'm going to the shows and that kind of stuff, it seems that most people know you and, you're a genuine person in a world that is not necessarily genuine all the time.
Yeah.
And people really respond to that. And I know that you've done a lot of favors for a lot of people without asking anything in return. And people appreciate that. So my included. So yeah, that's stuff, man. So so you mentioned you're an attorney. Perhaps you can also explain, kind of how you got into HiFi, how long you've been doing this, kind of at what level, what got you interested, just kind of.
Oh my gosh, I've been doing HiFi as an enthusiast. I have two older brothers that were really into 70s music. So I just became fascinated with music, just music. But really, something happened to me. I was 10, 12 years, I'm not sure, really young, maybe even 9. My brother Jimmy was supposed to be babysitting me. He got called into work. He was working as a nurse and dropped me off at his friend's house named Stuart Babin. And Stuart had a HiFi system. It was, I think, a Sensui receiver. He had a Techniques turntable and these big clip speakers. And he put on Thin Lizzy's Cowboy song. And, that big sound just washed over me. It wasn't sound, it was an experience, man. Roll me over, turn me. I just remember that. And I wanted that experience again. So my father was a college professor, and there it used to be notorious to have hi-fi shops right by a college.
Sure.
Because you'd hear a lot of people say, I got my first system in college, and that was really normal. So I would go and hang out at this hi-fi shop, and the owner would kick me out. I'd play with his Nakamichi Dragon, cassette, just moving speakers around. And I would just go in there when he wasn't looking and hang out. And these couple came in, and I sold him some speakers just by talking. You want to hear these? And he was so tickled by that. He had let me hang out. And from there, I got to find out who had all the big systems in town. And I'd ride my bike to their house and knock on the door and say, hey, can I hear your system? And I had big old afro, big glasses. And I think out of the 15 or 16 I went to, only one said no, man. They brought me in, man, hung out with me. Some of them even gave me some old gear. They were just so excited that I loved this, Tim.
Yeah.
And after that, I became obsessed with it. Got into the military, and the gentleman who picked me up, my sponsor, is the guy that picks you up and shows you around, happened to be an audiophile, and he was working Kenwood Military, and he was going to go work for another hi-fi shop. So I became Kenwood Military. So even in the military, I was doing some hi-fi stuff. And then I had a brother-in-law said, man, let's move down to California. We'll open up a shop. And I did. And it was a great time. Got to do some great systems for that Southern California thing. I did Barry Gordy from Motown System, Korn, Fieldy's nuts. That guy is, I did his, I did a bunch of that. It was a great time. And then I had a customer. My first customer ever was a guy named Steve Fisher. And Steve opened up this really high-level engineering business. And he said, hey, man, come help me with this. And I did. And that's why I went to law school, is because I was negotiating contracts for him. But that's not a passion of mine. And during that time, even there, me and Steve would go to hi-fi shows. And just like Al Pacino, no matter what I did, they kept pulling me back. People kept calling me, hey, help me out. And I was helping Audience, which is a local manufacturer here. And I'd work a lot of shows with Mofi. And eventually they said, hey, look, we're looking to expand. Would you like to come work with us? And the history of Mobile Fidelity, I mean, is such a wonderful history of compromised music. I couldn't say no.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so let's get to Mofi. Growing up, and I have a similar story to yours. I mean, at the age of, the first time that I heard any music that grabbed me was I think I was maybe, I don't know, 7 or something like that. Went over to a friend of my mom's house. Her son had a micro cassette player that he had recorded Back in Black off of the radio, and he went click, and I mean, coming through this crappy little teeny tiny speaker and hearing that sound, it's still been in my head ever since. Yep. And I mean, that really kind of set my love of music in motion. Of course, my parents being my mom worked for the Old Town School of Folk Music, and so it was, back when it was in Evanston, Illinois, and I think they had 3 students. I was just exposed to music over and over and over again, and I've been very fortunate in that regard. But talking about your early systems, my first real system was a Hafler 220 power amp.
Yeah.
A pair of Boston Acoustic A150s, kind of the big ones, which I had 2 pairs of. And I had a Nakamichi BX125, which, and that was in high school. And, I could not wake up for anything, especially school. And I remember recording, Dark Side of the Moon on that, and it had a switch on it to play as soon as it turned on. And I used one of those rotary dial, light turner honors or whatever when you're on vacation. And I hooked that up to the that Nakamichi with the bell section of Dark Side of the Moon, where it's all the alarm clocks and everything.
Yeah.
And I would just crank that thing at 7 o'clock every morning or something. The house would shake. Of course, everybody else was awake long before. And I would just turn it off and go back to bed. But that being said, that was the first exposure I had to having hi-fi, and it was I mean, it was electrifying. It was absolutely electrifying, and it's a lot of sound, not just of music, you know.
Yeah. And I feel like the younger audiophiles today aren't experiencing that just this total immersion in sound.
Yeah.
You know, the system that I fell in love with, that Thin Lizzy system, probably by today's standards, didn't sound good. It wasn't set up well, but that didn't matter. It's the way it made me feel when I left. Yeah. And that's what I keep trying to tell people. Hi-fi is more than just boxes and electromechanical transducers. It's something in your home that becomes like a roommate to you. You live with it. It comforts you. Being with COVID, you know, we've been isolated a lot, and it's just me and my wife and my dogs. And sometimes I need to escape. My wife needs to escape. And my hi-fi has been such a haven for me. I took a half my house, guaranteed it to my guitar and my hi-fi. Nicole did that. We call it the funk house. It's locked off. And you know, she'll be like, all right, enough of you. Go to the funk house. Now, what that means, you got to go in there and listen to some records. And about 2 hours later, I'm all right. But before that, I wasn't all right. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's, you know, you can have a bad day and sit down and put on a great record, drop the needle or press play, and it connects with you. Yeah. And for that time frame, that 5 minutes, everything that was happening to you that was causing you anxiety can kind of melt away. Yeah. To do that, you have to have a system that allows you to fall into it and is immersive. And that's really, as hi-fi enthusiasts, that's what we're trying to sell. It's not the sound or the gizmo, 10 watts, 20 watts, as they did in Boogie Nights, 4 channels per quad, you know, none of that. I'm trying to get you to connect to the music, just like people. When we were talking about soldering iron, I think we talked about soldering irons for maybe 15 seconds. Then we went on to Nels Klein that I saw do a interview about how you're a genius building these amplifiers in Chicago. You know, I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about experience. I want to connect. I want to connect with people in a 5-minute conversation, or a 50-minute conversation will seem like 5 minutes. And it's the same thing with a hi-fi system. A great listening session may be 5 hours and it feels like you just listened to the first song. Because that one song will inspire another song, will inspire another song. And that's what we're selling, that experience, not the gizmos.
Yeah. And, you know, picking up on that, you know, I think you and I share the same viewpoint in that, you know, I always say, you know, audiophile and quotation marks. And, you know, my interpretation of that is that audiophiles often get hung up on the numbers. They get hung up on what's the right thing, what's the, you know, what's right and wrong. And, you know, in music, there's no right and wrong. You know, I'm coming from the pro audio world. You're a musician yourself. You know, there absolutely is no right and wrong. And sometimes the absolute worst sounding amplifier will give you, you know, can give Neil Young the buzziest, Neil Youngish kind of, you know, sound that you can imagine. And, you know, it's not about right or wrong. It's about what you're doing with it, getting close to the music. You know, the right tool for the job is the right tool. You know, yeah. It's a good tool. And, you know, when people come in and say, what's the right thing, you know, there just isn't one. You know, what connects with you, you know,
right.
And that's where kind of knowing your customers, knowing how to relate to somebody who is looking for some type of audio gear, whether it be, in my world, you know, guitars and amplifiers, helping people like Nels Klein and others, you know, find their sound. Not that they need much help from me, but, you know, I'm there to lend a hand. And it's the same thing with music lovers, we'll call them, instead of audiophiles. And yes, I think good gear is important, but they're, you know, getting back to making you feel good after a bad day. You know, I found myself, you know, a couple of months ago, leading up to the election, I was in a terrible mood for like 2 weeks, and
were you?
Yeah.
I couldn't know.
You probably didn't notice. But, you know, I could not shake it with all the normal things that I do to kind of, you know, try to lift my spirits, even talking to you, which usually does it. I just couldn't do it. And I walked in to my studio here, and, you know, I streamed on Qobuz Rage Against the Machine. put it through my, Vigintis here in the background and cranked it. And honest to God, in 15 minutes, I was completely better. It was just a trial and a washing by fire. It was tremendous. So yep.
Yeah, if you connect to music and you can allow it to move you somewhere else, which you can in hi-fi, it will heal you. If you're having a bad day, if you've got some bad news or anything tragic that's happening, you just need to connect. You need to be able to find something that's greater than you, a great musical experience that you can just connect to.
Yeah.
And I like to share music. I don't have it around here, but a friend of mine, I actually grew up in a town called Lake Charles, Louisiana, and there's a guy named Gil Landry from Lake Charles, but I didn't really know Gil back then. And he went on to start Old Crow Medicine Show, and he has his own stuff. And, one of my customers turned me on to music in my own town, and now Nicole, my wife, loves Gil Landry. And out of the blue, I see this record show up in my front door, and it was said, "Not for Lenny." They gave her a record, because, I get all this stuff in the mail, and Nicole's like, nobody sends me nothing. So she got her own record, and she has not let me listen to it yet.
Good for her.
Yeah. And she won't listen to it till she gets her own turntable. Her an Ultra Deck. It's her own. Yeah. It's her own.
All right. So you're going to have 4 turntables in the house after she gets one.
Yeah.
All right.
We have 4 ears.
Hey, let's move on to mobile fidelity. So, I've been a vinyl lover for since I was 5 years old. Incidentally, I'm turning 50 tomorrow, and for my 50th birthday, I bought myself the Hendrix Songs for Groovy Children, the Fillmore concerts, 8 LPs. There you go.
8 nice.
And I plan on locking myself in my studio tomorrow and listening to the whole thing straight through. We'll see how that goes. But
that'll be wonderful.
But yeah, my first record was Boston. I remember I was 5 or 6 years old, and there's a place called Secondhand Tunes in Evanston, which is just one of those amazing hole in the wall record stores of yore.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd walk in and you just get hit with that weird, musty, old,
love that
cardboard,
yeah,
stale tobacco smell. And
tobacco.
Yeah, I mean, it still gets my blood pumping. Only if they made an incense stick like that, musty, old tobacco and
old record store smell.
So anyway, I was 5, 6 years old, swiped some money from my mom and went over and bought a record. I bought Boston based on the kick-ass, spaceship guitar thing they had in the front. Still one of my favorite records, incidentally. But ever since then, I was hooked on vinyl, and vinyl specifically, but all music, of course, all formats. But that leads me to getting into different record labels, and as somebody who really cared about how things sounded, etc. I came across Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, of course, back in the 80s. How long have they been around?
I would think late 70s, but I'm not sure, because they started out with an odd kind of purpose. The original owner was recording train whistles, Mobile Fidelity, things that were unamplified to see if he could get, as pure sound. And then that went into, I think, the remastering plan.
All right. So did they ever record any albums, aside from trains and that kind of, any musical instrument albums, as opposed to doing the remastering?
If they have, they weren't of any note that we would remember. It's no band that, they might have done their own original content, but I'm not really sure. Really, where they came is taking existing master tapes, the original master. That's one of the taglines of Mobile Fidelity. And then using the absolute best hi-fi gear, from power conditioning to cables to setup to the, they have their own proprietary cutting lathe. I think it's modified ortophon that's really rare, to the big stouter deck they have. I mean, just everything about it is they're trying to get back to the absolute highest fidelity, including, taking microscopes and going over each, groove, before they approve it. And it really is, that little sound lab, which is up in Sebastopol, California, is a testament to perfection. They just sit there and they make sure they can get the highest quality reproduction of that tape is available. And even there's something that a lot of folk don't know is, if you get a mobile fidelity, sometimes it says original master recording, and sometimes they'll say mobile fidelity sound lab, because they won't even tell, unless they can guarantee you that is the original tape. They won't put that up there.
All right.
They want you to know, when you see original master, that was the original master.
Right on.
And then they've gone to this new evolution called the one step. And a one step is, if you've never heard one out there in the world, please call a dealer, do whatever you can, order one. They're an experience. I mean, my wife, when I got a Yes Fragile, and I put Roundabout, and when I turned on the lights after that song, she looked at me flabbergasted, and she said, wow, it's just this huge dynamic sound. There it is. And they're an experience. And but that is a labor of love. I mean, usually when you have a record, you start with acetate, and from there they have a father, and from there they make a mother, and from there they make a stamper, and from there they make another one, then they start stamping records. The one step is a one step, man. It goes from that to convert to stamper. Boom, 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 one step. So it is as close to master tape as you can get. It uses a super vinyl, and that is a type of vinyl that even though it looks black when you pick it up, if you hold it against the light, it's actually clear because there's zero carbon in it. It's not a recycled, very quiet. And that's really important because they're trying to get as much dynamic contrast out of the recording they can. And if you have any noise, it kind of obscures that low level detail. So getting vinyl very quiet is important for those big dynamic passages. Great example is the beginning of Roundabout, when they hit that note and it just sits there and decays, and it just seems to go on forever. If you were trying to do that with noisy vinyl, you wouldn't have it. You wouldn't have those decays last so long.
And similar to my amplifiers that I build, it's the same concept, where my amplifiers are very, very quiet. No 60 cycle hum when you kick it on. You don't know it's live until you play a note, and you get all of this detail, and it's beautiful, and the notes evolve and open up and decay properly. Bursting noise and lost.
Your amplifier, when I got it, changed my perception and the way I played. Before, I could be a lot sloppier. Yours, man, it suffers no fool. I mean, you're a little out of tune on a bend, it's going to tell you. I mean, it is so percussive, so precise, and it just keeps that note resonating so long with such great saturation that it's made me more cognitive of exactly my bend structure, how I'm going a quarter note to a full note. It's really made me have to pay attention a lot more. So it is like I said, it's like a hi-fi instrument. When you have a cheap system, you can put speakers anywhere and you have the performance. But a good system, you need to take care of these things or you won't get the performance you paid for. And it's the same thing of your amp. It made me be a better player so I could actually understand what your amp was.
Right on.
Well, it pissed me off at first. It told me how bad I was.
Yeah. Get a cheap compressor. It'll help.
I know. That's what I did. It's all good.
Well, let's get back to Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. So one of my questions is, first of all, I'm glad you explained the fact that the vinyl and the one steps, while being kind of opaque, you can still see through it. Which surprised me. I was listening to the Mingus. These are pretty mind blowing, no doubt. I was listening to that the other day, and I noticed that it was kind of semi-translucent or whatever.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that, but so let's talk about all analog signal paths.
Okay.
Because it seems like there's this huge vinyl revival, etc., which is wonderful. Though I mean, I have purchased new pressings, which I had hoped would kind of be be the holy grail. And I heard digital garble on one of them, and these are obviously somebody should have listened to the thing, at some point along the way, but. Most vinyl being pressed these days is coming from digital masters.
Yeah.
And so, you're looking for that analog sound, but what you're really getting is the best and worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
Not to say digital is bad by any means. That's just simply not the case. But we're talking about analog here. So with Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, correct me if I'm wrong, but they still use 100% analog signal path. Is that correct?
100%.
There you go. And that's what you're paying for. That's absolutely what you're paying for. And that is not inexpensive or easy to do. Aside from, just their dedication to the platform and the music.
Yeah. We're kind of being hamstringed by our own success. Analog's resurgence is coming to be so big. They're just putting out record after record after record, sold at Target, sold at Walmart. No one can tell what it is, and they put it on a Crosley, and God bless them. It causes people to buy music and listen to music. I love it. But that being said, it's kind of like after grunge hit big and record companies realized, wow, people like this music out of Seattle. They tried to make every band they could find grunge. Didn't matter what kind of music. It's like, let's make sure you don't shower and we'll put some flannel on you and call you grunge. They're doing that kind of with analog. Well, if it's on vinyl, it's analog. Not necessarily. It's more to it than that. And that's why. But I think the resurgence of analog is that we want to connect. I mean, CDs were okay. You put it in there and you press, and you didn't really read the liner notes. They were kind of small, and streaming's even one layer good, but this isn't about sound. There's fantastic streaming. Qobuz is incredible, and it's a whole Library of Congress of music. But there is something about you having to put that record on, drop that needle, sit back. You can look at the liner notes, and it causes you to listen more. The problem I have a lot with like CD, if I don't like that song, I fast forward. Yeah. Well, the other night I put down a record. It was Bad Company. And it's this new greatest hits they had. And there's a few cuts I'd never heard before. And, you could hear them, even though it's you could hear them kind of doing he was doing a lot of Paul Kossoff riffs, a lot of free stuff going back to that. And it's a cut I would have fast forward through. And now it's my favorite cut.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Right.
It makes you sit. There's no fast forward. It makes you have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think people want, because, in my age, there was no such thing as singular video games. Your buddies came over, you played Sega, or you went to the arcade. It was a community thing. There was a lot of people in the arcades. Then it got to be, even before COVID, these kids sitting in a room with headsets playing all over, but disconnected.
Yep.
Now they want to connect. Records, vinyl, you have to connect.
Yeah.
You have to put it on there. You can see it. That needle grave, dragging that groove. I mean, so I think that's what it is. We want to get back to something that's slower. And how should I say, when we had 5 channels at my house, I think I watch TV more than when I have 50 channels. I spend more time going through the channels and not watching anything and not connecting to anything.
Yeah.
Vinyl makes me connect. It just does.
Agreed. Yeah. And those happy accidents, like you mentioned, of kind of thinking, "Oh crap, I hate this song," but being too lazy to get up and drop the needle somewhere else, and you do come across those things because you're forced to sit, and something that didn't grab you in the first 5 seconds on a CD player, and you just doink, and gone. Yeah. And there's a reason that really, really good albums have a cohesiveness and a flow to them, and there's a reason that they put those songs in a specific order, etc. I mean, all the classic albums, and a lot of people nowadays, of course, are paying attention to that, of course, because there's amazing music coming out these days. But yeah, Real quick, I'm just going to kind of toggle through a couple things that knocked me out that on Mofi. The two of them I just showed you. The other one being the Jerry Garcia Grissom.
Oh yeah, Grissom. Yeah, that's a great one.
This is a phenomenal sounding record. Just tons of air. It's beautiful. Acoustic instruments just sound like instruments.
Yeah.
Sounds strange, but they just sound like instruments.
Yeah, that's a great record.
Another one that I've always been a Los Lobos fan, and though this was probably my least favorite album, though it's probably the most. This is backwards here. This is probably the most favorite albums of them, but I bought it just because I'm a dealer and I needed to have some around, and I wanted to have a test copy of everything, and bought this, and because of its sound, I absolutely fell in love with this record, and everybody who comes through here kind of listens to and celebrates this record. It's pretty great.
Actually, I have that. That was a gift from my boss, Norbert. And Norbert said, you got to have this record. And I'm like, I like Los Lobos, but okay. And you're right. It's much different than, he was like, you got to listen. I mean, he gave me probably about 30 records, but that's the one he showed me. He said, you got to hear this. It's got great demo material. It's just good music. And he was right. And I wouldn't have listened to it. It wouldn't have been something I would have listened to. Even the fun stuff. Yeah. Mobile Fidelity has an Inagata Iron Butterfly, Inagata and Davida. And, if you're going to listen to a 14-minute, 70s drug-fueled drum solo, hearing it right is amazing. That's something I listen to all the time, but man, it just, oh man, I can't, the good thing about Mobile Fidelity is there'll be records you think you've heard, and when you hear a Mofi on a great rig, it's like you're discovering your music for the first time.
Yeah. Yep. It's a different experience altogether. Yeah. Well, so let's move on to getting back to your history quickly. So you owned a hi-fi shop, is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me about your experience of hi-fi shop ownership, and what were your experiences?
It was wonderful, actually. It was in Southern California called Audio Expeditions. I did Avant-Garde, Jeff Rowland, one of the first BAT dealers, Grand Prix Audio, the first Grand Prix Audio dealer. And Cardis, that really 90s kind of setup. And I loved it. The thing is I was meant to be a hi-fi salesman. Music is what I do. It's just, it's like the air I breathe, the water I swim in. And at that time, what was super popular was custom installation and home theaters and building these big rooms. And that occupied so much of my time, where I'm sitting there talking about lighting and curtains and not talking about turntables or cartridges. And that's what I was meant to do. Sure. So I enjoyed it. It was very successful. It just, at the end, I had a guy that I would sell a Koetsu cartridge to, say it's a $5,000 cartridge, come in and want to talk about this cartridge. And that's a very expensive cartridge in the 90s, $5K. But I didn't have time with him because I'm going to go do a $50,000 lighting job.
Yeah.
So I started to not be able to actually deal with the customers I liked, which then they kind of got resentful and said, well, I'll go talk to somebody who wants to talk hi-fi. So I was just left with that. We're talking to interior designers or, contractors. And it wasn't what I wanted to do. So it was very successful, but it was going in a different way. Then somehow that's still there, but hi-fi 2-channel started to have its own organic path. And those two things kind of separated. They still have a point together, but you have more CI stores and more enthusiast stores, and they have some crossover. So now I can spend time on the phone with somebody talking about a cartridge or talking about turntable setup, or those are really important things to me, because I believe that hi-fi is kind of shrinking as an industry. We need to get more people in there, and we need to be more inclusive instead of exclusive. And I remember when I was first starting out, there were a lot of hi-fi guys, even though they knew I wasn't going to buy. I was 13 years old. They would take their time to mentor me and nurture me, because I was important to their I'm going to be buying it 10 years from now. So I turned my back on that, or I didn't have the ability. I could not. There was only 24 hours in a day, no matter what I did, and I just didn't have the time. So I got out of that. If I couldn't service the audiophile the way I wanted to, I'll just go write contracts. But then when I said, okay, HiFi's back, there's people that want to sit and talk about music, about HiFi, get the best HiFi experience you can in your house. I was back in business.
Yeah. Man, I have all sorts of friends who call me and sheepishly say, they're not audio nerds or we'll just leave it at that. But their kids are, and their kids are, 15, 16. They say, would you mind terribly if my son came in? I'm like, are you kidding me? Bring him in here, because I've mentioned this on other live streams. There's a shop here in Evanston, in the Chicagoland area, Audio Consultants. I continue to service a lot of their clientele and a lot of their clients with Bryston and other manufacturers like that. But man, it was so important for me as a 15, 16-year-old kid to walk in there, be able to be trusted, have somebody, take the time to really enjoy nurturing my development and explaining things. And they had a lending library. I mean, they were letting a 15-year-old kid, take things home, and I mean, it was just absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that I borrowed that like blew my mind was a Threshold FET 9 preamp, and that rocked my. That was my first like, okay, there's a completely different level here.
Yeah. Now you get it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's a good piece.
30 years later, in my hi-fi shop. But so yeah, I love bringing young kids in here and explaining what imaging is, because I've never experienced imaging. People see my sound panels and stuff around here, and they say, "Is sound coming out of those?" It's like, nope, just those two things sitting in front of you, just those speakers. But it's all around me. It's a thrill, and just seeing kids light up. I mean, I pull up Cobas and I say, "What do you listen to?" Boom, and like they're just floored, absolutely floored. And we have to put time into younger generations and and celebrate this stuff. Keep it going.
Yeah, so, it's really important to me. We haven't had to have any hi-fi shows because of the COVID, but that was the thing that I liked. A lot of the guys would kind of suss people out. They can afford what I'm selling, and they'd spend all that time with them. And I had the opposite. They can afford it. So that's okay. I wanted to talk to people that will afford it 10 years from now. I need them now to want it. And a lot of times you'll see the young enthusiast, he may have a hand-me-down or a vintage receiver, a pair of speakers, but it's a good rig, man. And they'll almost look down like, I'm sorry, when they're telling me like, don't be ashamed. Yeah. You probably enjoy and connect to your rig better than guys I know that have $1 million rig.
Yep.
It's just an appliance to them.
Yep.
So I like to talk to people that I feel when I sell them something, regardless of price. I can sell somebody a Fikert turntable, 4-point arm, Koetsu blue lace, and I won't get as much satisfaction if I sell a Mofi deck with a simple leak receiver, because that person loves it so much. They call me and just love it. The other guy's like, yeah, it works. It's cool. I got to go get my other Ferrari. I like that. I make money on that, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate that he bought it. But where I get job satisfaction is when I hear somebody saying, this is incredible. We both share a customer named Michael Walker in Louisiana, because I'm from Louisiana. Yep. Michael's wife has passed, so right now all he has is HiFi. And we worked getting him a really great pair of Piega speakers, Master Line Source 3s. And he texts me, man, he just loves that. He connects with it, and and I feel good. I feel like I've helped him. I've helped him during this time of COVID and some of the challenges he's had. And when he calls me and is sincere with thanking, man, the time and effort we put, to me, I see a guy who spent a lot of money with us, but he's thanking us for the experience he has.
Yep.
And that's what it's about to me. Now you could take that same speaker and make it a tenth of the price, and I would have still gotten the same amount of satisfaction over a customer because they got that much satisfaction. Yeah. It's like a mirror. I'm as happy as the guy's happy, regardless of what they bought.
Likewise.
They bought a record weight. And they called me and said, Lenny, you said it would be better, and it's better. I'm happy, just as happy as if it was a $50,000 turntable. I'm telling you, it's the enthusiasm I get back. That's what I'm after.
Yeah, and Michael Walker is such a sweetheart. Boy, it's a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Getting to your point, talking about it doesn't matter what it is as long as you derive that joy from it. I'm growing up, I had two sisters, 20 years my senior. And the music that I fell in love with, and people have heard me say this before, is this Stereotech 1200 receiver, which was kind of an off-brand of Macintosh. As an engineer, I'm looking back at the schematics and thinking like they like flip the phase in the wrong places, and it's insane. But that's the receiver that I fell in love with music on.
Yeah,
and man, it is just unbelievable. And I still have that. I also still have, I've got this, I've got the finest of the fine, and like that thing still turns me on just as much as this stuff. In a different way, but it's where it's at. I mean, I hear it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I love music,
Yeah. So. And, I think it's a shame right now because we are having less young music enthusiasts. And this is the heyday of the integrated amps that are inexpensive that are coming out now from Leek or Premier or Macintosh or Marantz. There's so much great hi-fi. The foundation deck from the new Mofi foundation comes in right at $1,000, which is still a lot of money, but for the performance, and it's still made in America. Delrin Platter has its arm. You can really get into a world-class turntable or a whole system for $3,500.
Yeah.
And when I mean a world-class system, something that's going to last you 10, 15 years. Yeah. So you have something that's giving you true fidelity and enriching your life that you invested $3,500 and you'll get good performance. That's not so bad. If you, divide it up per year, I think that's more enjoyment than most people get for $350. So,
no
I think right now is the time. This is the time. And you can now, you don't even have to have a big record collection. You can just join Qobuz and have the whole world at your feet. So $3,500, Qobuz, subscription, and away you go. I would think I would see more young audio enthusiasts because when I was around, I came right in that time frame where CD was coming up and analog was getting kind of, you saw music stores, which would have all these record bins automatically be all these weird CD bins. And that's why they used to have the real long CD case because it fit in those bins. They didn't even turn them over yet. They didn't. So they had to build a packaging for the CD that allowed them to go in LP bins.
The open, mind you.
Yeah. And I could tell even then something was happening. But for me to get a good turntable at that time was hard because the inexpensive ones almost disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
So, it was hard for an entry-level audiophile, and high-end was high-end. There was no kind of integrateds, and at that time, it was more separates and more enthusiasts kind of stuff, and it was mostly used gear, hand-me-down gear that the starting out music, like I did, music lover would have to invest in. But right now, the world's their oyster for entry-level gear. There's tons of entry-level gear.
Well, let's use that as a segue into how did Mofi get into making components, namely their turntables, which are, that I got to say, I've got a Ultra Deck, Plus behind me, and they've been a good seller for me. People are floored by these things. I sell a lot of cartridges for other manufacturers. I install them, so I see all sorts of entry level and up turntables come in here. And the fit and finish of the Mofi decks is legit. It's a completely different thing. It's a cheap turntable. I don't know if you can see it there. There we go. It's a cheap turntable, and inexpensive turntable in the world of high-end audio, but man, it holds its own against my Fikert, you know,
Yeah.
right behind it, and that's an expensive deck with a Koetsu gold line, and I mean, you know, if that was the only deck I had, I'd be completely thrilled with it.
Yeah, I could live forever with an Ultra deck. I really could. I mean, it's well made. Alan Perkins from Spiral Groove Media, he was one of the designers. The feet were designed for vibration control by HRS Mike. So it's made in America, Ann Arbor, Michigan. John Schaefer runs that division called Mofi Electronics. He used to be with Wadia, and I knew him way back when he was working with Hales. Great guy. They do a great job there. And it's an American-made table. Even the motor's from Hurst. You know, I mean, it's just the only thing that comes from the East is the on and off button and the dust cover. Yeah. That's an American-made table. Yeah. And it sounds great, and it's meant to be easy to use, easy to set up. It was really successful during COVID because we could drop ship them. Where like some of these tables are hands-on but somebody could be a brand new enthusiast, get that table, follow the instructions, and get very good performance at a very reasonable, high value price, because part for part, it has everything you would expect in a very high-end table.
Yeah.
Delrin, same thing as our Fikerts. I mean, it just, you know, AC synchronous motor, the HRS feet, gimbaled arm. It just, everything about it punches much better than the individual. That really is a sum of its parts. And they work so well together, and it was such good forward-thinking engineering as a package. It's hard to beat regardless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people don't take it as seriously. If we were double the price, they'd probably sell more. They'd take it more seriously. Yeah. But it's really not an entry-level table. If we part for part, it's a very high-end table.
No doubt. And even the Mofi phono pre's, which I mean, I got to say, the first time I saw it, I was kind of like, you know, okay, they had to make one, I guess, you know. But man, you plug that thing up, and it's legit. It's got all the customization that you could possibly need, you know, changing the capacitance, the loadings for different cartridges, etc. It's just a dynamite sounding little unit, even compared to other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just super impressed.
Yeah, Tim Di Parafacini, who's just passed away, rest in peace, is a genius. He was, you know, he's the engineer's engineer. He's one of those guys that I've never heard anybody not say something good about his work. He built those phono stages, and again, you know, they're almost at a price point that people don't take them serious enough. I have heard better performance, but it's like 3 times the price, 4 times. I mean, so I have one in a little system with my Mofi, and when I'm sitting and listening, I don't ever feel like I am missing out on anything.
Yeah.
If anything, what it does is it gives me this great, warm, true analog 70s, what I remember sound that I start picking different music. Yeah. So I listen to a lot of 70s Linda Ronstadt, real rich, mid-range female vocal, and that just does a great job. I mean, they're not a toy phono stage, even though they're small and they're at a great price. That's a really serious phono stage from a really serious designer.
Yeah, right on. And Tim also did work with Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, correct? And
yeah,
do a lot of work with their signal path.
Mm-hmm. He helped, I think, with some of the modifications of the actual tape deck, maybe the head. I'm not really sure of all the details with that, but he is Stan Richter himself. That's all been part of that that family.
All right.
You know, that's a tight knit family. I think there's 6 guys that work up there, and they've been working there for a long time. They don't, you know, those are artisans, I call them. Those are masters of what they do.
No question. No question.
And we're talking about like John K. Wood, who I talked to you about because he's a Grateful Dead enthusiast, and you have some, you know, some Grateful Dead memorabilia kind of stuff. We were talking to him. This is a guy who's so into music that he used to record the Grateful Dead on these great rare Neumann mics as like a teenager. But when Jerry passed, he told us it took him a while he could even listen to that music.
Yeah.
That's the guys that are working at that sound lab. Music's religion to them, man.
No doubt.
they're a great company, man. I really dig them. And there's, Millie Watt, the dog, is there. I mean, they have a dog runner. I mean, it is a family. They believe in what they're doing. And they all have different musical tastes. Mike Grantham, who runs it's really into like nudie suit kind of country, that old Grand Ole Opry kind of stuff, like the Fine Burrito Brothers kind of growing into that. And then they have that's why there's a lot of Ry Cooder releases, the Grateful Dead releases. They're really into that. Yeah. And some people would say, well, that's not necessarily what we would consider audiophile music. And that's where they're wrong.
Yeah.
It's not audiophile music because it's, not some girl singing something with, 4 standards that they sing, and it's very safe music. No, this is real
music.
Yeah, it's just good, great recorded
music you want to listen to that also sounds good. Yep.
Yeah. I have heard some demoed cuts.
Oh yeah.
That are wonderfully recorded. I mean, the noise is great. And I'm like, what's the point? It had every sound except music.
Yeah.
No musical significance. Might as well have been, crickets chirping.
Yeah. I know which album you're talking about, actually. Yep. So we won't smear anybody here, but so let's talk about moving on with Mofi. So we have Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, the record label. We have Mofi Electronics, and we have Mofi Distribution.
Yeah, and I work for Mofi Distribution. So Mofi Distribution is really the sales arm of Mofi. So we sell the turntables. We also import gear, some wonderful, wonderful speakers from Switzerland, which you've sold a few pair of. And they're truly unique. They're using handmade ribbon technology that they make in-house. It's a family business, aluminum boat tail enclosures called Piega. But what's great about Piega is they have a speaker with the ribbon in aluminum enclosure all the way from $2,500 all the way to $250,000. But they're proud of every one of them. That name's on it. Piega's on it. So that $2,500 pair is got as much love that they can build into it, fit, finish, care, matching, as their $250,000 ones.
Yeah.
It is a true wonderful luxury kind of feeling, and it's not something you're going to see everywhere. So it has this great kind of club kind of feeling. I'm in that club, and that's what we got for that guy Michael Walker, and he loves them. Just absolutely loves these. These things are just so special. So we import that. We also import stuff from England, West Vono stages, which has kind of been my thing lately. Really low noise, big dynamics, big headroom. You love them as well. Koetsu cartridges from Japan, which is a family business. His son, now Sugano-san's doing it. And these are handmade cartridges from samurais. The original designer was a sword enthusiast, and it's that aesthetic, man. It's just so perfect. And each one's like a little work of art. I don't even call them cartridges. I call them, musical instruments, because like no two instruments are exactly the same. No two Koetsus are really exactly the same. I have about 3 of them. I'm obsessed with them. And another one we're doing from Japan, who used to work at Koetsu, is My Sonic Lab, which is a fantastic cartridge. He is the cartridge maker. He makes a lot of cartridge for other people. He's a great designer. He's thinking outside the box. Very high resolution, musical, another great cartridge. And we do Leak, Wharfdale, Balanced Audio Technology. We're the sales division of Balanced Audio Technology, which you have some recs there. It's one of my favorite electronics companies in the world. Great story.
Yeah. I'm just completely blown away by the BAT products. I've got a Rex 3. I'll soon to have a Rex 3 power amp. I've had other Rex things, and it's just an absolute different league. It's pretty mind-boggling. And as a tube designer, those are tube products. They do make solid state power amps, of course, but man, as a tube designer, I look at that stuff and I'm just in awe. I mean, it's just superb. Yeah, it really is.
It's the breath of life. The designer's a gentleman named Victor Kaminko, who went to the Polygrad Institute of Technology, worked at Hewlett Packard building these great O-scopes. So he's a test engineer. He understands what's going on. And one of his coworkers named Steven Bednarski was an audiophile enthusiast, and he had this preamp, I believe, and he was asking Victor about tubes. I think Victor rebuilt the thing, and that's the start of the company.
Yeah.
He did it, from where he was with the original to the modified was such a difference. And he really does design for what he calls the breadth of it's this connection I'm talking about. It's the beauty of music more than just the sound of music.
It's obvious.
Yeah. And it's and like I said, it's Russian. It's like an iron fist, but in a velvet glove. It's got authority and great resolution, but it's also musical. It's got great extension, and his solid state is wonderful sounding. He's not just a tube designer. Tubes are for a reason, and even the tubes he uses came out of MiG fighters and Russian, and his single edge bridge design, his topologies are incredible. I'm really proud of that line. That's one of the reasons I joined back up, is they were a line I sold at my store. And I wanted to, bring that back to glory. Rex, it's good to be king. And I do find it some of the best sounding gear in the world.
I agree wholeheartedly. And every single person who walks in here who hears this is just flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I will say that, obviously I stock and carry a lot of mobile fidelity distribution products. So who makes the decision as to what products to purchase, in terms of as a distributor? Because everything out of that distributor, Mofi Mofi distribution, definitely has a sound and a musicality first and foremost. There is, from what I've heard, I haven't heard a dud in the lot that doesn't deliver something. There's obviously all sorts of levels, but it all has a certain musicality that is just really easy to embrace.
Yeah, that would be probably the management of John and Norbert. Norbert came from Samico. He came from media, worked with Rel, Macintosh. He's been around for a long time. Him and his wife came into my shop years and years ago, and I'm proud to say his wife still says it was the prettiest shop she had ever seen. So I like that. But my wife and John, both of them have really good ears, but they have really good ears for, is this different? We're going to be giving something to our dealers that they can sell. Why would somebody want to buy this? Not just the sound, the way it's built, the box it comes in, its features. They work really hard. They'll get a product. It may take them a year or two to listen to it or understand it before they really pull the trigger. And sometimes they'll just fall in love with something. I think the Piega was like that. They heard it and it was like, I think John wanted a pair, and he owns a pair, I think. So, but yeah, that's what it is can we offer something that has our core aesthetic of musicality, but offer something a little different? That's why we have two cartridges. We're not saying that one thing's the same. My Sonic and Koetsu have different flavors of equal performance. They're just a little different. Chocolate, vanilla. I don't know. I own both, and I love them for different reasons. They're very personal to me. And sometimes I just want to rock out. I want to play, and that's when I put my my Sonic, got this great drive. Then sometimes I'll want to put my Rosewood Standard on, which has got this beautiful mid-range that Koetsu is known for. And I'll put on some just acoustic music, like James Taylor 70s singer folk. And it's just so intimate and so subtle. And then if I want glorious rock and roll, they're just different for me. And, but yeah, that's Norbert and John. They do a really, really good job getting our assortment, making sure we have, inventory for our dealers. And, one good thing is my last job, I had to do a lot of that management stuff, and I get to sell now. I get to spend time with the enthusiast. And so, they make my job easy, but they work really hard, those two guys. But yeah, that's who's really pushing that front.
Right on. Yeah, well, we're kind of coming up to the hour mark here. I'd like to kind of end by just telling you what it means to me to kind of watch people. Earlier on in our conversation, we were talking about younger people kind of coming on and stuff. That's exciting, but more exciting to me is, obviously I deal with a lot of musicians and people who are who have they're in their late 60s. They've been around and around and around and around, and they come in, and we've known each other for decades. They've heard everything I've ever owned, everything I've ever made, etc. They own Schroeder amps, yada yada. They come in, and with the systems that I'm selling now, and many of them are brands that you just mentioned. They come in, they sit down, and instead of having conversations about the minutia of what exactly is this, what is it doing, what are the specs on it, what is all that kind of stuff. They sit down, I drop the needle or hit Cobuzz or whatever it is, and we don't talk about that stuff anymore. They're dead silent. And one gentleman was in here, again, an excellent customer, known him for decades. He came in and he told me, after listening to a half hour's worth of music in complete silence, he turned to me and I said, I knew that this was possible. What's going on now, I knew that this was possible. Conceptually, I had never experienced it, even though I'd been in all these hi-fi shops, everything else. Tim, what you have done, and the systems you're creating, I've never ever had this connection, and they're emotional about it,
Yeah.
and I was the same way. I mean, I just recently, this is the first time in my 30 years of being obsessed with this stuff, 30 plus. This is the first time that I feel that I've kind of made it, if you will, and it's just being able to focus on the music is the most important part.
Yeah. That you sell the music, not the gear.
Yeah.
That's what I do. The gear's a means to the end. You do a demo, prove that concept of what hi-fi is really like, blow their mind by three-dimensional soundstage, true dynamics, true timbre. A nylon string guitar sounds like a nylon string guitar. A steel string guitar sounds like a steel string guitar. They have the inherent timbre built into those instruments. And then when you get there, after that, once you've got that, now you're just negotiating a price to figure out within their budget what'll give them that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really what I like. I don't just try to say mine's better than theirs. There's a lot of great gear, and they're built by friends. I don't sell Eggleston Works, but you sell it. Tim and John, they're my buddies. I like them. I know what they're doing. They build these products. So it's not that kind of competition. I believe my competition is any gear that's uninspired and unloved, that's treated like a toaster. If somebody's building something with true passion and love and somebody buys it, that helps the high end. We all get risen. It's high end against mundane audio. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I, as a business owner and human, will only deal with manufacturers, etc., who I enjoy their company. We can have rapport like this. We talk about music. We talk about all sorts of things. And people who come in and say, all right, you've got a quota of this and this and this a year, otherwise you're out. If that's their opening line, I am just not interested. It's not to say I can't sell that much a year, but I don't want that to be the primary focus. We all need to feed our families, of course, but it's much more than that to me.
I've never had that tact with dealers. I believe that that is short-term success, long-term failure. I want a dealer to get under, his legs under him, understand the product, and then get some sell through time. Let him hone his way of doing it, his demo. And then once you do it that way, I've noticed this. I have dealers that can't wait to dial that phone to tell me they've sold another product. Yeah. That's what I want. Lenny, I've got another one. Yeah, they're excited to tell me, because they want to do that because I've helped them. And that's where I am. They're working for me because I've worked for them. That's the relationship I want.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm just as happy I'm getting the order as they are placing it.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
And I have the same relationship with my clientele. You know, I've been in business for 30 years. I can count on literally on one hand the 5 bad experiences I've had with my customers. I have a customer base of 2,500 people who are very dedicated to me because I'm dedicated to them. You know,
Right.
This isn't about a quick sale. This is about, you know, getting to know somebody. You know, since I'm coming from the pro audio world and, you know, customization of every single thing, I've learned to listen to people and you know, I want them to be happy. I want them to be thrilled. I want them to, you know,
Yeah.
That's what it's about, and that has carried over into, you know, people. When I got more into the hi-fi side of things, of course, I'm still doing my amps, but when I really turned my focus to the hi-fi side of things, people said, "Well, that's a pretty radical departure from what you're doing," and it's like, no, it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. I'm listening to people. We're talking about music. We're finding out what works for them. I'm very opinionated, but, you know, I don't let that get in the way. You know, I want people to be happy. I don't know.
Well, it's okay to be opinionated if you're flexible.
Sure.
You have an opinion. This is what I think. This is what my years of experience have told me. I'm flexible about it, but I'm always honest. I think that's good to do. I think that's bad to do. I think you should wait. Even if you don't have the money, don't buy that now. And I'm really kind of honest with that. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. But the ones that listen said, man, I'm so glad I listened, because now so I try to show people I know the right path because I've taken every wrong one. I've done everything wrong to realize what I've done right. Sure. So, you know, use that experience. Don't have the same mistakes I've made. And you have such a unique background. You know, you also have pro players that are also audiophiles. Jake Seneger from Humphreys McGee, you know, he's got some great vinyl stuff, and he's great. And that's where we cross, because I didn't really dig or know those guys as well. And then you introduced me to all that. And, you know, so I'm backstage and, you know, Jake's just ripping out you told me he's a player. That guy's mind blowing. And then he hands me, hey, you want to play them? No. You know, ripping out Segovia and then playing, you know, on top of that, some like Megadeth stuff, some Marty Friedman. I'm like, how is he doing this? You know, and he's just perfect. But that is what I think makes you unique, is you've had to deal with people that music is their job. It is not pleasurable to them necessarily. This is how they make a living. And you've had to listen to them because they're using your gear as tools. Mm-hmm. So in that situation, you've really honed taking descriptive words and understanding what they want out of a sound. And very few people can do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, you've earned it.
Yeah.
Years and years and years of experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think we're kind of coming to an end here, and I would like to thank you for your time, and always good to chat with you. We do it every day anyway, but we never get to stretch out a little bit. So
yeah.
It was very, very pleasant. And you know, I'm sorry I didn't get to many of the what do you call it when people comments that have been written here. Thank you for them. You know, I will say that, you know, a couple of the comments have been that they're really enjoying this format and that we need to do a podcast, that kind of stuff. And just to let everybody know, I think this is the third in a series of conversational style, informational, conversational, whatever you want to call it, video casts. And this is going to be an every other week thing at least. I already have a lot of recording engineers, mastering engineers, musicians, people of note, people that I find super interesting. So I'm looking forward to, you know, doing exactly what I did with Lenny and I here. So that will be happening. Look out for, you can, if you're not on my YouTube, which is Schroeder Vids. Or my Schroeder Amplification, of course, is my Schroeder Amplification Facebook page. There will always be things on Instagram as well as Facebook in terms of what's coming up and that kind of thing. So
absolutely,
just keep your eyes peeled, and we will get back to it in a couple of weeks here. I already have somebody lined up. So
okay,
all right, man. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Timmy. Happy birthday. Tell your family I said hello.
I will.
All right. Take care.
Your dogs for me.
All right.
And your wife while you're at it.
I will.
All right, man. Be well. Cheers.
All right. Take care.